We both have hot mics. Good evening and welcome to the council meeting of July 29th, 2024. The meeting is being live streamed on the Town of Kentville YouTube channel, and the most up-to-date meeting package is on the Town of Kentville website. Council is not scheduled to meet in August. However, if there is business, meetings will be called and will be posted to the Town of Kentville website. The next planned meeting is September the 9th. So this meeting was actually called to order at 5:42 for items in a closed session, and those were land, labor, and legal. Our agenda was also approved, so for those of you who actually modify your agenda, your modification will be on the in-camera. A remains land, B is legal, or is labor, and C is legal. So thank you very much for that. And right now we have, moving on to our business, approval of the minutes. The first set of minutes for approval is June the 24th. Are there any changes to this set of minutes? No? All right. July 4th. This was the joint special council meeting for the IMSA. Any changes to that? No? Perfect. And our next set was July the 9th. No changes. Council meeting minutes on July 3rd, special council meeting for a legal matter. Any changes on that one? July 25th, just last week. Are there any changes on that one? All right, no changes. Then we are golden. So we are now moving on to business arising from the minutes, or old business. And this is with regards to a correction to the Valley Waste Guaranteed Resolution. So a correction has been made to the partner shares of the Valley Waste IMSA Intermunicipal Service Agreement. In June, Council approved issuance of a debenture based on the capital projects in the amount of $1,735,000, with the Town of Kentville share being $176,102. However, the actual share for the Town of Kentville should read $178,011. So the motion is that Council approve the Valley Waste debenture issuance in the amount of $1,735,000 with the Town of Kentville share at $178,011. Deputy Mayor, thank you for the second. Councillor Huntley, thank you. It has been moved and seconded that Council approve the Valley Waste debenture issuance in the amount of $1,735,000 with the Town of Kentville share at $178,011. Is there any discussion on this matter? I realize this is the third time we've seen this, Council, but we were dealing with numbers that we were getting in the sheets. So are you ready for the question? The question is on adoption of the motion to approve the Valley Waste debenture issuance in the amount of $1,735,000 with the Town of Kentville share at $178,011. Voting is now open. Voting is now closed, and the motion is carried. Thank you very much. This evening, we do have a presentation to Council, and our auditor, Andy Force, is here to present the draft 2023-2024 financial statements, report, and management letter. Andy, the mic is yours, and Council, if you have any questions throughout, I would ask that you just use the queuing system, and we will respond as required.
Thank you all. I think last year I kept moving this up and down, so I apologize in advance if I keep hitting it again. I want to start by thanking staff once again. The audit started near the end of May for field work. We were here in February, March for some audit planning, and throughout the process, between those 2 dates, we worked with management to sort of redesign what we're looking for in terms of audit package for working papers, reconciliations, and other source documentation. We thought it would be a good time to sort of tailor the process, modernize it a little bit, and hopefully ease the burden on staff during the year-end process. And they were extremely cooperative, and the package we received was once again fantastic and made for a very efficient and effective audit process. Also, throughout the process, staff were very accommodating and cooperative. We did a little bit of extra work this year around IT. There's been significant changeover in financial staff over the last few years, so we added additional testing for that as well. So it was slightly out of the norm in the work we had to do just because of the circumstances. But again, they were very cooperative, and we are very appreciative of that. We encountered no difficulties throughout the audit. What we asked for was provided. I like to describe it as unfettered access. So for those watching at home, we come in and we are given a boardroom with the entire accounting system provided to us with our own access that is complete and full. So literally we can dig down into every single transaction should we want to, which is lovely. So really nothing is withheld from us from the town staff, which just makes the audit process quite easy and effective. I will also comment that about 1 week ago, we held the audit committee meeting to sort of review the financial statements in depth. I would say 9 times out of 10, those meetings are approximately 30 minutes or so, brief, up to an hour possibly. I don't want to say the word superficial, but I will comment that this audit committee met, and I thought the level of discussion for the past 2 years, at least, if not more, has been very in-depth, very engaging. And as an auditor, I take a lot of comfort in the fact that a lot of questions are asked, even things that might not exactly relate to the audit that we're talking about now, but future things and what is disclosed in the financial statements and what isn't disclosed in the financial statements. So that level of discourse for 3-ish hours, possibly even slightly more, while unusual, it's healthy and vibrant discussion. I like to commend the town audit committee for having such a thorough process, which is great. We did make a couple of recommendations during that process for possibly increasing the volume of meetings for the audit committee throughout the year. We suggested possibly a third one, which I know the committee will meet and discuss amongst themselves. But the whole process has been, once again, a lovely audit process. So thanks to everybody involved in that. We do show on the financial statements an operating surplus of approximately $1.26 million. The budgeted surplus was $2.7 and change million. So the difference there was mostly because of reduced capital grants. So there were some capital projects that weren't completed, so the grants weren't fully received, and that would explain the vast majority of the difference there in the budgeted versus the actuality. So otherwise, costs were controlled quite well according to budget, and revenues were in some cases over, including from your investments. We've seen better returns on interest and so forth like that. A couple other highlights on the financial side. Accounts receivable have increased, I would say, significantly from the prior year. Most of that was an outstanding capital grant at year end. Also, there's the municipality of the County of Kings receivable has grown again. I know this was an issue several years ago. It had been addressed. It is starting to creep up a little bit. Nothing like it was a few years ago when it was in excess of $1 million. But again, I know management is on that, and there's been discussions, and I'm at peace and I'm comfortable with that balance and the action plan in place for that. The other thing I'd like to point out would be Capital expenditures were up over $4 million this year. That was up from just under $3 million the year before, so we're returning to good, healthy levels of capital expenditures. I know budgeted capital expenditures were almost $9 million, so we didn't achieve that, but that's not entirely unusual either in today's climate, but I know some projects are ongoing in this part of town here, actually. So that's nice to see, over $4 million in capital expenditures once again. The water utility, well, if you looked at the water statements, you'll notice it's approximately a break even. There was a very small deficit of about $20,000. I did have a recommendation in place or ready to report of a new rate review study. However, in discussions with management, it was identified that there's already one planned and sort of underway, which is good. What we've seen province-wide as auditors is the cost of public works and utilities has almost tripled in many cases. So the last rate review for the town of Kentville, I believe, was 2016, which is a significant period of time. The fact that you're still running at approximately a break even is actually surprising, but so it is nice to know that the town of Kentville is considering that at this point in time. And while the results will not be known for some time, our expectation is that most of the financial indicators that are established by the province of Nova Scotia, that the town will either meet or exceed them. And that is wonderful. Not many towns do. For those who are familiar with that report, most of, they give you 3 levels. There's a green, there's a yellow, and there's a red, which coincides with the stop signs, I guess. Green being great, you've exceeded the thresholds. Yellow meaning you're in the okay zone, but you could improve to be best practices, and red would indicate that some action is needed. We are expecting either all or most, other than 1 or 2, to be in the green zone once again, which is nice to report. And I think that's a testament to the financial strength and viability of the town of Kentville as we sit here today. So after all of our audit work, once again, and I guess my best analogy, I've said many times, would be the old TV show Law and Order. The first half of that show, they gathered as much evidence as they possibly could. The second half of that show, they made their conclusions. We do the same thing as auditors. We gather as much evidence as we possibly can based on a risk-based approach, and then we evaluate and form our conclusions. And this year, we are happy to once again conclude that your financial statements are presented fairly within the standards of public sector accounting standards. So that means we offer no reservations or qualifications on the audit report, and we do believe they are presented fairly to your users. That would be the highlights of my report from the statements. We did also, in the audit committee, every audit for a municipal unit has to have a management letter. It is required by the province of Nova Scotia. There are 3 thresholds in that management letter. 1 would be a material weakness, 2 would be significant deficiencies. Both of those levels would require some action by council and the audit committee and management to remediate any concerns found in those 2 sections. A material weakness would be a very urgent matter, and it should be drop everything and address this right now. A significant deficiency would be we need to act upon this quickly, but not exactly an emergency. And then the third category would be other deficiencies or just other matters to highlight. In our past as auditors, there have been a few areas that we've addressed as material or significant. The most recent, I do believe, was the municipality of the County of Kings issue a few years ago. This year, however, we are happy to report that even with the additional testing, that there are no material weaknesses and there are no significant deficiencies noted. There was one recommendation, is the best way I could describe it, that where you do have significant turnover in staff over the past few years, especially at a leadership level and in the finance staff, that a comprehensive and robust sort of onboarding program could be developed to make sure that your policies and procedures and internal controls are adhered to by all staff. Sometimes people come in with different agendas or different knowledge bases, and it would be good to have a program in place that they are up to speed on what your expectations are for following your internal controls, which are a very robust and healthy set of controls, and that none of your sort of policies are neglected or not followed. And that was it from our perspective.
All right, thank you very much. Council, do you have any questions for our auditor? Councillor Gerard.
Thank you, Worship. Thank you, Andy. Just a quick question, and I don't know whether this is the appropriate spot to ask this, but with the proper notice given from Kentville Volunteer Fire Department to take over their own finances, do you, because it's not technically under an IMSA like Valley Waste, King's Transit, something like that, do you foresee any, I don't want to say issues, but do you have any comments on that happening?
Yep, I'll provide a bit of background, and if I overstep, raise your hand and I'll stop. In the past, the town of Kentville has provided the accounting services for the Kentville Volunteer Fire Department. I do understand it was well before my time, but I understand there was difficulty in the past of the fire department to sort of create that process on their own. They do obviously have limited administrative resources. Of course, the resources in the firefighting world are extensive and tremendously valuable, but on the accounting and administrative side, it's been more of a bare bones, if you will, in terms of what they have available. So we were asked to provide an opinion on that matter. We have issued a report quite recently on that. We did identify some weaknesses that would be very critical to overcome. I'm not saying they couldn't be overcome, but we did provide approximately, well, I would say 4 very strong recommendations for improvements to the design that we were provided by the fire department, as well as approximately 12-ish best practices for internal control there. Provided those can and would be achieved by the fire department, it is very possible that they could go about their internal accounting function on their own. Speaking practically, it is not uncommon for, I guess we'll relate them to a not-for-profit, if you will. I mean, I know they're not quite that, but it is not uncommon for those segregation of duties issues, which is a limited number of staff, and you just can't separate all the things that you want separated in the accounting function. It is not uncommon to see that, and what you need to see on top of that then would be either compensating or complementary types of controls that would sort of reduce the risk to an acceptable level. And there are some of those types of controls, either compensating, effective oversight function is incredibly important. That would be a good example of a compensating control. Periodic reviews, independent reviews if possible. I mean, I don't want to give recommendations because that's in their court, of course, but there are things that could be done to reduce the risk. It's no guarantee, of course. A controlled design is only as good as it operates. So if management doesn't adhere to our recommendations, trouble could happen, of course. That could happen anywhere. It could happen here. But if there was a design in place and there were sufficient complementary or compensating controls, you could reduce the risk. But ultimately it's up to the people doing the tasks. And if there's competent people doing the task and you have a good control environment, it is possible. I can't guarantee it. I believe your question was, could there be trouble? Of course there could be trouble. When you do have segregation of duties issues, that risk is amplified, and it is very important to have very strong other types of controls that would provide you enough comfort to have that accounting function done.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor. Hi, Andy.
Hi.
Thanks for your presentation. One of the items that you and Director Matthews talked about during our audit committee meeting was the investment, the wise investment policies and the use of the perpetual fund. Can you just expand a little bit on that for folks so that they have maybe a good understanding of that fund?
Sure. So many years ago, less gray in the beard, the Kentville Electric Commission was sold, and there was an investment fund created from the proceeds of that sale. 10 million of that is deemed to be an endowment fund, which means you can't touch it. The others approximately, and it does vary from year to year, and depending on how things have done, there's approximately now $3 other million in that perpetual fund. This past year, it created income of approximately $850,000 of interest and dividends and things of that, which go into the operating fund to fund your operations. That might not seem like an extraordinary large sum of money, but I will say that your tax rate is as low as it is because of things of that nature. And there's other things that are probably a bit more confidential that you do to generate revenue that are putting you above other municipal units as well, which allows you to keep your tax rate quite low. And I spoke before about the indicators. Most of them would be green and possibly one or two might be yellow. In the past, the ones that were yellow were your tax rate was a little bit on the lower side based on the income per capita in the area. So that's a good thing as a resident, to keep the tax rates low, but there's a reason for that. It's because you have other sources of income. The restriction there would be, $10 million or $13 million when the utility was sold in the 90s, if I'm not mistaken. If it was in the 90s, is a lot different than it would be now or in 15 to 20 years ago. Your hands are somewhat tied in what you can do with that principal, we'll call it. You cannot just invest it into higher, you cannot go buy Bitcoin. That would not be allowable, of course. So you have a very strict investment policy that was recently updated in the last couple of years. I know it was under a longer term for the process, but you're somewhat restricted in what you can do with that fund in terms of you do have ability to invest in growth stocks. It doesn't have to just be GICs and things of that nature, but you do have thresholds of what you can do. And it's a great resource to the town. It continues to be. But where you're able to grow it or not is your hands are tied quite a bit there. So in the last couple of years of as interest rates have increased, it's been a really wonderful addition to the operating fund in the last few years. Even in the prior years when interest rates were quite low, it brought in $500,000 or so of income. So it's a great resource to have for the town. You're just somewhat hamstrung, if you'll pardon the expression, by what you can do with the actual principal balance there.
Okay, thank you. Are there any further questions for our auditor? Andy, I guess I'd like you to maybe not clarify, but just speak to a couple of items. One is the robustness of the software that we use, and the second would be the mentorship that was provided through part-time staffing with an employee who had retired. So if you could just speak to those matters, thank you.
I'll speak to the second one first, if you're okay with that. So I was delighted to know that Robin Page, who was an employee for 30-ish years, I want to say, as your accountant, and she's been replaced by Jill Sutherland, who's now the accountant who would serve under Director of Finance Matthews. I would consider this. Public sector accounting standards are similar but quite different from normal accounting standards. So it's almost a specialized area within accounting, and it's extremely difficult both to find people and train people who are qualified to do that job. You did extend on a consulting basis Robin Page's tenure here. She retired last August or September-ish, and she remained around as needed for a few years. And you were spoiled rotten with Robin Page, to be honest with you. Not to say that Jill won't be just as good, but if she is just as good, you're exceedingly lucky, because Robin was 3 times the value of what I'm sure you paid her, because she was extremely competent and just a tremendous resource to the town of Kentville. I can never speak highly enough of her work and her as a person. So that I would consider that more of an investment. And I think it's important. We did talk about it for quite a bit during the audit committee meeting, in the sense that you just don't go find someone, even if they graduated from a CPA college or whatever else they've done, you just don't go pluck someone and throw them into those roles and have them be competent. It's a very much learning on the job type of role. And I would say the accountant job is a minimum of a year to 2 before they even start to feel comfortable in that role, unless they have prior experience, of course. And the reason I mentioned it was because while you're also exceedingly lucky to have found a replacement for Deborah Kroll and Director of Finance Matthews behind me, I know at some point in time she'll want to retire as well, hopefully many years down the road for your sake. But when that happens, I thought it was nice to point out that that was a wonderful template for how to make that transition seamless, because and I alluded to it before, when you have transition on the CAO and Director of Finance and the accountant, which are three, from my world as the auditor, are the three most critical roles, we did extensive additional testing to make sure that all things were still on the correct path. And they were, of course. And it's like a knife's edge. Like if it's very, very easy to get off track. And then once things get off track with your internal controls, very bad things can happen. We have examples in the valley or close to the valley with the former town of Bridgetown, and that was obviously an extreme example, but you can boil it down to someone was provided an opportunity because there was no internal controls. They also had a new accounting system that failed, which speaks to your first point, I suppose, as well. And then when you provide someone an opportunity and there's no means to detect or prevent it, then bad things can and did happen. There's also been times recently in Cape Breton where there was a management override issue there with a CAO, controls weren't followed, and then again there was misappropriation of assets there as well. So with new staff coming on now, but also in the future, especially those key roles, the accountant, director of finance, it is very, very important to have, I would consider it to be an investment, an overlap, if you will, between former staff, if you can find them, and the new staff coming in so they can learn the job and feel they have their feet underneath of them. Because it almost feels like you're trying to tread water for 12 months of the year when you first start. You'd have a mentorship process there, but also for your own protection, to make sure your controls are followed and that person can be onboarded properly, to know what you expect of them as a council, what your standards are, and your standards have always been exceedingly high, which I always appreciated. So I think that's not so much a cost as an investment in those key roles there, of course. Now the lower roles are a little bit different because you would have a higher level in charge there to mentor them on staff, but those top roles are very difficult. The first one would be the accounting software, and I'll tell you, where most of the instances of fraud or significant errors that are unintentional, so just human error, come when you don't have a proper accounting system in place. Now, while we all like Simply Accounting, they're easy to use, and people are on QuickBooks and QuickBooks Online, and all those, you go buy at the store packages and you put them on for $30 a year or whatever it might be. They can work for a lot of businesses, a lot of people, but it doesn't mean they would work in this type of setting where controls are extremely important. I mean, if we're going to be blunt about it, as a resident, we give you our tax dollars, and we expect you to be effective stewards and for that money and to use it wisely and spend it how you're supposed to according to budget, and any inappropriate expenditures or things that you don't really have a good grasp on, that would be problematic, of course. So your accounting system is more than just capturing data. It's a type of preventative control to make sure that both you're providing accurate results, which then provides accurate information to council and residents, but also protects against things happening. So I know in your system, it's up in the boardroom. I'm in the boardroom every year. There's a computer screen on the wall, and you have a system that will identify as an audit system that if things are changed. So in theory, what could happen was I can write a check, and it goes back to the person who mails the check. They could change the name to their own person or their own company, and that's happened here in close to home. The the hospital. That was a risk, but in your case, you have an extra module on your accounting system that other systems just don't have those capabilities that identify to me, to the CAO, I believe Director of Finance as well, that says this has been changed. So you've approved something as a mayor, and then after that it got changed. Well, at least 3 people get a warning saying, blink, 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 and they can't get rid of it. It's there, you have to address it, that says, this is what's happened. And it might just be, and it's happened a few times since I've been there, but it might just be, rather than a very long name, it's more of an operating name that's changed from whatever. So, and when it pops up, I do, of course, investigate. But those types of add-ons to your system provide more than just accounting assurances. They provide assurances that your money is being properly spent and tracked, and that nothing bad could happen. So I can't speak enough to your system, and it continues to be one of, if not the best, for municipal accounting in Canada. And it's robust. You can add different modules as you need, and you've added several. I think if any municipality was looking to switch, they would look to switch to what you use currently, the Great Plains. And I think it's a tremendous all-around package in terms of it can be tailored to very high levels and kept quite basic, but still efficient and effective to do all of your needs. QuickBooks couldn't do public sector accounting standards. It would be very challenging and a lot of manual work. And the more manual work you do, the higher the risk for misstatements that are just unintentional. So your system is extremely high. I know we talked a little bit about AI. It's coming, of course, and that was a lot of the work we did with your IT specialist. But nothing like that is sort of in place quite yet. I'm sure it'll be imminent, but what you currently use is still, I consider to be top of the line and a well-worthy investment, and other towns would be wise to use it as well.
All right, thank you very much. Since there are no further questions, I want to say on behalf of council and the town, thank you so much for your work. And we do have recommendations coming from the audit committee, but they will be held under new business. So again, thank you.
Great, thanks very much.
All right. Okay, council, we're moving on now to our recommendations, and our recommendations from CAC on July the 8th will be read and moved by Councillor Huntley. Councillor, did you have a question?
No.
Oh, okay. Go ahead.
Thank you. At the July 8th, 2024 meeting of Council Advisory Committee, Strategic Initiatives Coordinator Alicia Christie reviewed the tax rate of select properties in Kentville on Harrington Road in the Colebrook area. Staff recommend that these properties be considered for a lower tax rate due to reduced services. So Council Advisory Committee recommends that Council approve a rural tax rate and further directs staff to draft a bylaw to effect the changes to residential properties on Harrington Road to Council. I so move.
Thank you. Second? Deputy Mayor, thank you. It has been moved and seconded that council approve a rural tax rate and further direct staff to draft a bylaw to effect the changes to the residential properties on Harrington Road. Is there any discussion on this matter? There being no discussion, are you ready for the question? The question is that council approve a rural tax rate and further direct staff to draft a bylaw to effect the changes to the residential properties on Harrington Road. Voting is now open. Voting is now closed, and the motion is carried. Thank you very much. All right, we're moving on now to our council reports, and first up is Deputy Mayor.
Bless you. I'm first, am I?
Yeah, we changed it up a little bit tonight.
Have you? Okay. Okay. Thank you, Mayor.
I don't know why I did that.
That's all right. That's all right. No worries. So June 24th was an operational budget meeting where budget was presented by Director Matthews. And July the 3rd was a REMO meeting, which I chair, and I have attached the minutes for your perusal. There's lots of items that I can mention there, but there's about 11 pages of the minutes. I always make a plug for the Vulnerable Person Registry to encourage people in Kings County to sign up for that as they see fit. Dan Stovall talked a lot about hurricane season, which commenced in early June of this year. He talked about wildfires and expectations and always having a kit ready to leave your house at a short notice. July the 4th was IMSA. It was an in-camera meeting dealing with IMSA joint with MOK et al., rest of the county. July the 9th was an in-camera meeting of council, legal matters and land matters. July the 23rd was Investment Advisory Committee, which the year-to-date results was a money-weighted net of 2.437 versus the balanced income CAD of 1.56. And our portfolio, as Andy noted, is just north of 13 million at this juncture. July 23rd was the audit meeting that Andy just reported on, and there was a report to the audit committee. The town of Canfield audited financials. Consolidated were presented with notes from the Director of Finance. It was a good, clean audit. Our FCI should be favorable with no material issues via the management letter. June the 29th was the Pride Parade. I took part in that, walked in it, and it was a wonderful day, and just wanted to make note that I'm proud to say that Canfield is an inclusive community. And that is all I have. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Councillor Gerard.
Thank you, Worship. You didn't think I had a report, that's why you went to me. So, July 17th, I had Police Commission. I'm sure Councillor York will fill you in as the chair. July 18th, we had Kenful Volunteer Joint Fire Services. And I took these statements right from they're probably the most pertinent, they're right from the chief's report. They used some of the funds from the firefighters 50/50. They bought it's a 2011 Ford F550 for $50,000. It's a brush truck, and it aids, and they've already used it. It aids in helping with grass fires and forest fires. Recruitment and retention efforts have kept the membership steady. It's not like it was many years ago where folks joined the fire service and they were there, not necessarily lifelong members. Everybody's got busy careers, busy families, so there is a little bit more turnover than there was years ago, but they I believe the number was 55 or 53 current members. Probably a few more would be ideal, but we get pretty good turnout considering 2023 we had, I believe it was 504 calls. We received confirmation from the contractor the new rear doors to the auditorium have arrived. I don't know if you drive by the rink, you'll see they've got the doors boarded up because they're putting in some, I believe they're steel galvanized stairs to replace the old ones. Let me see. They're doing some renovations to the kitchen and stuff. So the pumper tanker, which was scheduled to arrive in the fall, has been delayed to supply issues. It should be here in the spring of 2025. We'll wait and see. And that is my report. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Councillor Huntley.
Thank you. So the date of the last council meeting was July 8th, and the last CAC meeting was July 29th. No, it wasn't. How about going the other way? Sorry. So my committee meeting, the first one that we haven't had in a while because of the new role as chair and vice chair that have come into Valley Wren and LOC. We were given a view of what the role was, so there was a couple-hour session. There was a provincial accessibility steering committee meeting. I have attached the agenda, and the King's Remo meeting, as Chair Savage has talked about. Again, a little bit of the agenda in there as well. And the one thing that I liked in that report, to add on what Deputy Mayor had talked about, was some discussion has started about the Nova Scotia Guard. And it wasn't a lot, but because I know they're still in limbo with a lot of things happening. But if you go on to, if you're interested in signing on, just to, if you're thinking about it, you just go on and you can actually learn a lot just by going on their site, see what kind of questions they're asking. So that was interesting. Valley Wren, we had discussion of a new board member. It was a short meeting, and interim IMSA council meeting, amendment of an agreement. I attended some of the Kenful events. There was a Lions Senior Social. I only made a short appearance, but I heard they had 27 people in attendance, so I wanted to thank all the Lions who hosted the event. My first year of volunteering at Special Olympics, it was incredible. 825 athletes, 325 volunteers. It was probably, of all the volunteer work that I do, it was probably one of the most amazing experiences of my life, I can say. And the next one was the Canada Cup National Bike Championships over from Thursday to Sunday, which was awesome. And from what I hear, there's been a lot of talk about how much they love to come to Kentville and our trails and our gorge. And 2 of the world cyclists came to one of the event planners and said it was possibly the best trail that they have ever been on in all their travels. So they were excited to come back, so that was nice to hear. And then I attended the Anglican Church breakfast, which is always full, and the meal is wonderful. Other meetings, just a couple I'll point out. One was on the Coastal Protection Action Plan. What we did was we came together to talk about ideas of what we would like for them to put in for the consultant to look at when they're coming up with an action plan for Action 8, which concerns municipalities. So stay tuned on that. We haven't heard anything back from the first meet. I took a tour of the Andritz plant, and I'm sure, like many, we drive by there all the time, but you see a sign and you never go in because there's not a drop-in spot. The tour took about 2 hours, and it is an amazing plant to see how things work. And when you think about that plant, and it's helping just to put paper together, but when you go into each section and they start talking about where it goes and how it's produced and who's working the machines, it's pretty incredible. So I was pretty grateful to have that tour for sure. And that pretty much is my report. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Deputy Mayor?
Thank you. Through the chair, through the mayor, sorry, to the chair. Through the chair to Councillor Huntley. The Coastal Protection Action Plan. So I know obviously that's somewhat being passed down, I'll call it, from the province to the municipalities. So like, what's the expectation of that? Like, is it a group of, like, how many? Is it different folks from different municipalities that are getting together and meeting, or?
Well, we've had one meeting.
Okay.
And there was 4 representatives from the province there.
Okay.
And 3, including myself, council elected officials. And 1 was from Halifax, and 1 was Brad Redden, who's from Annapolis.
Yes.
And what they wanted really was our input on what do you think a consultant needs to know about land protection in the municipal eyes.
Okay.
So you could give your ideas on straight from, do you include realtors when they're selling properties, to land that's already there, that's been passed over to generation, and is there protection on it? How do you get it? It was from the basics to things that I'm sure that are still on the docket that we haven't seen yet. So, I don't know how many more meetings that they will have.
And are you on that committee, or can anybody just go to those meetings?
No, I am on that committee.
Okay.
So I was nominated to go on it through NSFM.
Oh, I see.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay, great.
So,
Thank you.
and I'll keep you updated.
Yep, great. Thank you.
Councillor Maxwell?
Thank you. Through the chair to Councillor Huntley. Along the same line as Deputy Mayor with the Coastal Protection Group, was there anybody from the actual coast? Like, was there anybody there from South Shore? Was there anybody there from Eastern Shore? Any of those people down around Yarmouth and the Hawk and in that area? Are they on that committee?
1 is from, I want to say was South Shore, doesn't live there anymore, but their parents live there. So they have a connective education there because they grew up there. But I can't tell you where the other ones are from for sure. Okay. Yep.
But it just seems funny that if the province is going to discuss coastal protection, that the people from the coast aren't represented. just seems strange to me. Okay, thank you.
I think where we're seeing that is directly through the NSFM. So this is an advisory committee. And if you look at the folks around the board table who are from that area, Carolyn Bolivar-Getson, for example, they're right up front. Now, the other thing as well is that the province has given the NSF, or has contracted to the NSFM some work, particularly or specifically with regards to bylaws and policies that municipalities might put in place. So there's also funding attached to that. And at some point, there will actually be a person who sits at a desk and helps out all of the municipalities with this information. But there's $6 million right now funded to the NSFM to really get this rolling for municipalities, because the province, although they have handed it off, have also identified specifically with an outcry from the municipalities that we just do not have the horsepower to take this on individually.
Yeah, that makes sense. It's just funny that they're not represented on that committee.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Councillor Maxwell.
Thank
You're
you. Let's see, date of last council meeting was July 23rd. Advisory meeting was July the 8th. None of my regular council committees met in July. July 4th, a special council meeting over Teams, which is like Zoom, a joint meeting with regional municipalities involved in our intermunicipal service agreements. July 9th, we had a special council meeting that was in camera. July 23rd, special council meeting in camera. On July 20th, I went to the Canadian Mountain Bike Championships. I dropped in to see some of the cross-country races. Again, a fantastic organization, done by, I think, mostly our recreation staff, but I think they had some help from a local mountain biking group as well. Athletes from across the country attended. Some were Olympic caliber athletes. Great weather, couldn't ask for more. Kudos to our recreation department and volunteers for all their work and time to bring this quality event to Kentville. July 22nd, I took a visit over to the Oakdean Community Garden, and I stopped in the community garden and chatted with a couple of members from the garden club who were filling the raised beds with soil. Many members of the garden club are from the seniors apartments next door, and they are thoroughly enjoying their work in the garden. This is a really special part of their life that this has become. And the crops that they planted are thriving. They told me to encourage people to come and take what they need. High praise was bestowed on our staff member, Roxy, who initiated this project. It's an amazing project, and I would encourage citizens who haven't dropped by Oakdean Park to drop in and see what's been done there. And access for the community garden is off the Oakdean Avenue entrance. And that's my report. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor York.
Thank you. I had quite a few meetings this month. I think everybody is anticipating an August hiatus, and so they like to cram a bunch of things in, but that's neither here nor there. We had, in early July, we met with the working group for the regional recreation facility, which spurred a couple of additional meetings, which ultimately ended in a closed session meeting with council to brief everybody on what was happening on that front. There was the Board of Police Commission meeting, or Commissioners meeting, which Councillor Gerard alluded to. We are making some decision points along community engagement sessions, prioritizing community engagement for the fall, and working with staff and chiefly working with Recording Secretary West to get some things moving there for the public. So stay tuned for that. It'll likely be September, I think, is what we decided. But please don't quote me. Additionally, we've been setting, or we rather have set aside in the budget, training funds for the citizen representatives in the DOJ, the Department of Justice representative, to be able to partake in the National Police Association conference. It's happening in Halifax this August, but in order for councillors Gerard and myself to attend, we have to use our council budget. That was set aside, and one of the parameters for asking for funds, extra funds from council. So that's greatly appreciated, and I do believe 2 of the 3 community representatives will be going. So that'll be very helpful. I also had the opportunity to participate in campaign school over on the South Shore. I was a guest panelist at their campaign school. We were paid an honorarium, however mine was donated to Chrysalis House instead of into my account. I also participated in a 2-day-long conference at Acadia, Leadership and Trust in Canadian Politics. It was cross parties, cross levels of government, opportunity to sort of create. Well, there was a panel discussion, and then additionally, we were tasked with thinking of ways to create more engagement opportunities for folks to run for various levels of government and what that looks like, and was just a stepping stone for further engagement sessions through that chair. So it's been a busy month. I anticipate a slower month next month, and I'm looking forward to it, quite honestly. But that's my report.
Thank you. Didn't I say we would call meetings?
Yeah.
Councillor Zabian.
Thank you. So I attended all the same meetings as my colleagues. I won't highlight those because you've all done a great job with that. Joint Fire was on the 18th, and Councillor Gerard highlighted just about everything from that. I did learn something new that meeting that I didn't, is that the department has 58 members, but they're not all interior fighters, and I think about half of them are. So it was something I never knew, but we had the audit committee meeting on the 23rd, which our auditor has spoken of tonight, and I did attend the Lions Club Social on the 12th, and I'm going to put a little plug in for them. They're finally going to paint the exterior of that building on Saturday, and they're looking for volunteers. So if anybody home likes to paint, I know myself, I get it on myself, so I'm not a great painter, but if anybody's free on Saturday, they would love to see you go over there and help paint the facade of that building. This last month, I had many phone calls and drop-ins just over. A few people are concerned kind of with safety issues downtown, a lot of issues about flooding, and there's some concerns which I think are going to be addressed tomorrow just on the bike lane and a barrier that's going to put up. So that's my report for the month. Thank you.
All right, thank you. CAO?
Thank you, Your Worship. Since last CAC, I've met with residents and replied to correspondence post-storm that have requested it. I've met with staff to follow up in the event. I've met with the Kings County CAOs and the REMO coordinator to follow up on it. I attended a meeting of the Intermunicipal Service Agreement Board and CAOs to talk about the path forward over the next year. Worked with finance as part of year-end audit and reviewed financial statements presentation. Met with the deputy clerk with regard to council orientation post-election, and met with the CEO for the Valley Wren, Emily Boucher. That was my first meeting with her, so it was more introductory in comment.
All right, thank you very much, CAO. Are there any questions for the CAO on his report? All right, we'll move right on to my report. So all the meetings that I attended from the time of the last report are reported here. A couple things of interest. On the 25th of July, I was fortunate enough to attend the Low Carbon Leadership Symposium. It was a one-day event in Truro, and they were talking about changes to lowering carbon, of course, and grants and initiatives available to municipalities. I'm going to say that it was a very young group of folks in that room, which it seems that climate change is really, a lot of young people are really focusing on this and moving that way. So it was very nice to see. On the 26th of June, I was fortunate enough to have a Nova Scotia Power presentation, which was done for NSFM members. And they had a really good presentation, and they did tell us that they were going to send us that presentation. However, they haven't done that yet, and I am back at them for it, because they had this really good chart that shows how they reconnect power when there's a storm. So you know how sometimes your neighborhood, you don't have power, and you walk out and you can see that little switch on the power pole that you know that's the only thing that needs to be clicked in place so that your whole street gets power. Well, there's actually a whole reason why that little switch is not getting clicked in place at that moment in time. But I am looking for that chart, and we will post it to our Town of Kentville website so that you have that information going forward. We had several committee meetings. The first was the Source Water Committee meeting, which was held on the 19th of June. Of course, our water here in Kentville remains very high quality and consistent with all the parameters in the Canadian guidelines. And Kings is conducting some work. However, that does not affect us. The next meeting was actually the Kentville Water Commission, and that was the same day. So from an operational perspective, everything is running well. We did have our budget that day, and we noted that we would be going into deficit funding for the operational budget. And as our auditor mentioned, it's time that we start looking at things. We had 3 water utility accounts totaling $355.96, which were considered uncollectible. And we did speak at length to that, whether or not there was some way we could attach these to the property so that even when somebody leaves, that they are still accountable for it. Mr. Cliff Hill has been with the Water Commission now for 4 years, and his term is at an end. So there is a requirement to go forward and advertise for a new citizen committee member. This is a very important role, and we do ask that the committee member has some experience in water business. And as well, I should say that members of the Water Commission and members of this council have a responsibility from both financially and how the system is governed. So these are very important roles. And we did approve the new budget. So the annual budget meeting was held subsequent to the commission and approved for input to the Town of Kentville operational and capital budgets as follows. Our revenue would be $1,350. Our expenditures would be $1,900,004, and I'm really frigging that one up. $1,904,948 with a deficit of $58,100. And our Water Commission capital budget is $737,500. We have several new projects. The first would be to conduct a water rate study, make a request to the UARB for a water rate increase, and advertise for a new citizen member. With the Audit Committee, our audit was unqualified. That was held on the 23rd of July 2024. Our projects under that were to appoint 2 new citizen members and to extend our contract by 2 years, and both of those will be coming forward in the report. From a policy change perspective, our auditor recommended that committee meet at least 3 to 4 times a year, 2 times with the auditor and 2 times without the auditor, and that meetings could be timed with quarterly statements and to include presentation of the FCIs. And there were some changes made to the accounting. However, those did not affect us as a town. Miscellaneous events, the best one I'm going to say was the KCA Grade 8 graduation ceremony. I brought greetings on behalf of the town, and as always, our Grade 8 students are absolutely wonderful. It was quite a big class, and they are going on to, most of them are going to NECEC. However, we do have 1 going to Central Kings and 2 going up to Horton. Thank you. And that is my report. All right, our new business is with regards to the audited financial statements, and we do have a recommendation from the Audit Committee that Council accept the 2023 audit report and documentation as presented. If someone could move that, please. Deputy Mayor, thank you. And Councillor Zabian, thank you. It has been moved and seconded that Council accept the 2023-2024 audit report and documentation as presented. Is there any discussion on this matter? Are you ready for the question? The question is on adoption of the motion to accept the 2023 audit report and documentation as presented. Voting is now open. Voting is now closed and the motion is carried. Thank you very much. And we have a recommendation that the firm of Kent and Duffett Chartered Professional Accountants competed and were awarded a 5-year auditing service contract with the town of Kentville in 2019. The contract provided for extension of services. Reappointment occurs annually as a matter of form. And Council was looking at the fact that we have this rider in the contract, or the committee was looking at this rider in the contract and felt that with the changes coming forward that it would behoove us to look at providing or extending the contract by 2 additional years. So it'd be 2024 and 2025 and 25-26, and additionally there's still the requirement to reappoint annually. So if someone could move, okay, Councillor Zabian for the motion and Deputy Mayor for the second. So it has been moved and seconded that Council extend the current contract with the firm of Kent and Duffett Chartered Professional Accountants to provide audit services for 2 additional years, 24-25 and 25-26. Is there any discussion on this matter? Are you ready for the question? The question is on adoption of the motion to extend the current contract with the firm of Kent and Duffett Chartered Professional Accountants to provide auditing services for 2 additional years, 24-25 and 25-26. Voting is now open. Voting is now closed, and the motion is carried. Thank you very much. Now, with regards to the Audit Committee, the 2 members of the Audit Committee were appointed in October of 2023, and one of those members resigned, and it was determined that we put a notice on the website for the vacant citizen position. And we had 3 applications were received and evaluated against best practices skills matrix, and the committee selected Mr. Mike McLean as the recommendation to Council to fill the vacant position. Mr. Noonan advised us that he would complete his term this audit, and the recommendation to Council from the committee is for that position to be filled by Mr. David Ritzy. And it should be noted that these are 2-year positions, and that they are reappointed on an annual basis, and they may serve up to 2 years. So the motion coming from that is that Council appoint the following Citizen Committee voting members to the 2024-25 Audit Committee, Mr. Mike McLean and Mr. David Ritzy. Councillor Zabian, thank you. Deputy Mayor, thank you. It has been moved and seconded that Council appoint the following Citizen Committee voting members to the 2024-25 Audit Committee, Mr. Mike McLean and Mr. David Ritzy. Is there any discussion on this matter? Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor. I know that in presentation of this motion, you talked about the skills matrix that was used. Can you expand just a little bit more on that with regards to the selection of these 2 gentlemen?
Thank you very much. So there were 3 sources for that best practice. We had several documents from other audit committees. I serve on 3 other audit committees. So we had Deloitte's, we had BDO, and we had MNP. So those documentations of what they call for on an audit committee. We had the municipal the FRAM, the financial report, and that has best practices as well for an audit committee. And we had established our skills matrix within our policy. So we used all of those and made up a matrix and then evaluated the 3 applicants against those. The members of the committee were provided with the applications, and they were provided with the skills matrix. And from there, we made a selection online due to timing with meetings, and so that's how we came to that decision.
Great, thank you.
And those will remain ongoingly as part of the audit committee package. And as well, with the recommendations from our auditor, the policy should, G57, committees of council, should be updated to reflect these changes.
Okay, thank you.
All right, are there any further questions with regards to the motion? Are you ready for the motion? The motion is on adoption of the motion to accept appointment of the following citizen committee voting members to the 24-25 audit committee, Mr. Mike McLean and Mr. David Ritzy. Voting is now open. Voting is now closed, and the motion is carried. Thank you very much. All right, the next matter we have on our agenda is an appeal with regards to Ryan's Park. So an appeal has been made to the proposed site plan approval of the Ryan's Park site located on School Street for 2 multi-story buildings. The following process will be followed. The development officer, Riley King from C&D Community Design, will present to council the approved site plan proposal and the recommendation to uphold the approval. The appellants will be provided with 5 minutes to speak on their appeal with a recommendation to overturn the development officer's decision to grant approval of the site plan. There are 3 appellants. They are the only speakers scheduled for this appeal. The council will be permitted to ask questions to all parties. Council will be expected to make a decision to support the development officer's site plan approval or overturn the approval in favor of the appeal. Raleigh, the floor is yours.
So this, I'm just waiting for my computer here, one second. This was a development that was put forward by Encore Group in 2019. Originally, it was for a row of townhouses and 2 or 3 smaller apartments. I believe there were about 44 units. And this application that we received, I think it was this past November, was to amend that to have 288 unit buildings on the site at 25 School Street. So in receiving a site plan, I had to go through some criteria that's set out in the land use bylaw that would apply to any site plan that was applied for. That includes the site plan presented by a development group, which would show, the location of the structure and any greenery around it. Locations for parking and other facilities such as that, lighting plans, some sort of understanding of traffic or existing vegetation in the area, any connectivity to existing trails, or storage facilities for waste, or any stormwater management. So we would take that information. I had a back and forth with Dave Bell on several items in this list. And after some review, we were able to determine that it did satiate the site plan criteria. So it was made at that point to pass the decision. As part of the site plan approval process, it has to go to the neighbors within, I think it's 30 meters. And then they have the right to appeal to the site plan approval project. So I'm not too sure if there's much else I can give you other than that. I think you do all have the report there for you. We just need to read their appeals from here.
All right, thank you very much, Raleigh. Council, do you have any questions with regards to this report? Councillor Zabian.
Thank you, Mayor Snow, and thanks, Riley, for that. A couple of questions I have. With regard to the traffic, it says there that our Director of Public Works said that there wouldn't be an issue, but there's probably some documents from 2019 that would back that up, or I don't think we received those in the package, and I wasn't on council in 2019, so it'd be kind of nice to see. That's one thing. And my other question is, this was a site plan approval, right? So I got to ask you a question about site plan approvals. If you have a site plan approval and you're the property owner and you sell that property, does the site plan approval go with?
I'm not entirely sure on this, but I think that it would be thrown out and then they would have to start another site plan approval process.
And my other question is, I know that when this development started, we were in COVID, and I mean, things got delayed, and I think, if I remember correctly, I wasn't on council, but I think they were supposed to have 16 townhouses built in a certain amount of time, and they didn't get those done, and that's fine. They've got them up now, and they look good. But what I'm concerned about is, this looks nice on paper, 9-story buildings, and there's 179 units. What kind of control do we have in place if the developer builds one and then waits for 4 or 5 years to build the next one, and then that road is in constant chaos for the next 10 years? There is no control, and I'm assuming with this. Is there a way now, because if hypothetically council says, no, we're not going to do this, can we go back to the developer and say we'd rather do a development agreement and change up gears for that project, and then we have more control? Because for people that don't understand, development agreements give council more control. And it's to me, you know, it looks nice on paper, but I worry that, because that project there, I don't know if it started, I can't remember exactly if it started in 2021, the townhouses, or 2020, but that was forever and ever, and I know there's delays, and I can totally appreciate that because I've been there myself, but after what's happened, that would be kind of something I would look at if we could do a development agreement. I'd have more faith in that. Thank you.
I'm not sure if we can go after this process straight to a development agreement with this type of zoning as well, but I think there is like a time limit for site plan approval that, you know, say they went several years beyond that, maybe Jeff could speak to this for me, that they would have to apply again.
No, Jeff can't speak to it, but perhaps Darren Shoup can.
Darren's right behind you.
Through the chair. So I guess I understood two questions there. One has to do more with the purchase and sale agreement that this property made, and I'm not fully aware of how that was arranged, but there may be conditions within that would set a timeline when construction could start. Through my discussion with the developer, I believe they want to go right away, should this be approved. But that being said, that's not written in stone either, so I would have to refer back to the purchase and sale agreement, and I'm not sure if the CAO is aware or have been briefed on that yet, so we'd have to do a little more research on that. The second question was with regards to development agreements in what is the C1 zone, right? So it's the commercial zone. That's not currently a process that has been written into the land use bylaws as an avenue to go forward with, so that would require, again, amendments to our planning documents to permit. So there's no path forward. There is a path forward through a site plan approval process, but not for a DA for that zone. So.
Okay, thank you.
Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor. Hi. So initially, there were to be 3 buildings, right? 2 40 units and 1 39 unit. And those buildings were going to be 4-story buildings. So we're now looking at 2 88 units. So 176 units compared to 119 units, albeit there's 2 buildings compared to 3 buildings. So in terms of how many stories are in this building, I know that in our land use bylaw, there are no height restrictions. So that was just something I wanted to have just a little bit of feedback from you and or Director Shoup, sorry, because one of the things that I've been thinking about, and probably some other folks on council have been thinking about, Carolyn from C&D, of course, has mentioned, you know, with regards to our LUB and our MPS, that there are, you know, that there will be changes forthcoming or recommended changes that will be forthcoming. And I started to think about, you know, that there are no height restrictions in Kentville. And if that was potentially something that down the road might be coming forward in, you know, as a recommended change in our land use bylaw. I know I was looking at the Bryson development that's going through in Wolfville, and they have a height restriction of 6 stories. So that was just, I just wanted to have maybe a little bit of dialogue around that.
Yeah, I mean, there is no restriction at the moment on buildings for this area. I mean, do you want my opinion?
Sure, yeah.
I mean, given that it's kind of in the downtown core or something like that, I think density is kind of something that you would be looking for. Another thing too is that there are larger minimum setbacks for larger buildings like this, so that they can have more amenity space or green space surrounding the buildings. I think that's probably something else you could think of further with the planning documents in the future. I think that, you know, a height restriction could be possible, but that really comes down to what we think the community wants to look like and how we want density to appear in this area.
Yeah, again, all discussions as we move forward, right? So if I may. So with respect to the amenity space requirements, and I know you talk about setbacks and so on and so forth, balconies are actually considered amenity space, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, in terms of the, yeah. The management of storm and surface water was addressed back in earlier days, and then the same stormwater infrastructure would be considered adequate for this development now, correct?
Yeah, that's as far as my understanding is, yes. So that came down in my correspondence with Dave Bell.
Okay. Can you talk a little bit about the traffic piece? Because I know that there, in the report, there was talk about ingress and egress, and that there were various spots where there could be exiting and entering.
Yeah, again, for that, I'm mostly relying on my correspondence with Dave Bell. It was my understanding when they accepted the original site plan approval request that it was determined that the road was going to be feasible for traffic then, and the road hasn't changed since then with the 2 buildings instead of 3 buildings. So the idea was that it wouldn't make traffic or that it could handle that amount of traffic.
Okay, thank you.
CAO?
So, just to provide some enlightenment as to why the 9 stories, we don't have a height restriction, so what we did was we talked to the fire department about what size building that they felt that they could fight a fire on, and up to 9-story was what the reply was. So.
Councillor Maxwell.
Thank you, Lily. Just a couple of questions. I noticed the setbacks are 20 feet. I'm looking at the map here, and it's showing the 3 buildings, 2 on School Street and 1 at the back of that property. Which one of those buildings wouldn't be there? So they're only going to put up 2. So which one isn't going to be there?
I think it's a different shape than that, because it's more that there's one over here, one more centered.
Well, okay, so there is no housing directly behind each of those.
To my understanding, it's
No, so if we took up that one, it's on School Street, and the other one's back at the back of the piece of land.
Yeah, it's the adjacent properties across the street.
Right, it's across the street, okay, and there is gonna be greenery and so on put in there. I'm just wondering now, who's going to do and be responsible for the property maintenance? So who's going to maintain those bushes and the green, the grass and things like that?
It's my understanding that that's done by the developer who owns the property.
Okay. So it's a Halifax developer. Would it be fair to say that they're probably going to farm that out to somebody in the local community?
Yeah,
To look after
that's
that?
up to their discretion, but.
They're not just going to walk away and leave it? Can they do that?
I don't really think that they could, but, I mean, they would have to be responsible for things like snow removal, and the roads that they're having put in there. And the maintenance of that would be up to their responsibility as well. The amenity space is supposed to be maintained to a certain
Degree.
standard, yeah. And, they're connecting to the existing trails off there. I know we mentioned to connect to Elizabeth Avenue as well.
Right.
And they have a green barrier that they're trying to preserve with developing these two buildings.
Okay. Okay. Well, it's good to know that there's no houses right beside or behind those, so thank you.
Councillor York.
Thank you. I think my questions are going to have to go through the chair, so my apologies. First, Alicia Christie gave a presentation at one point that outlined how many units the town of Kentville would need over a period of years. So in the immediate future of 1 to 2 years, and then I remember the presentation, but unhelpfully do not remember the number. So I was hoping either one of you would. And then secondly, are there other 9-story buildings in the Annapolis Valley or within the Joint Fire Services community? I'm just curious how the 9-story assessment was reached by the Kentville Fire Department. I trust their numbers, but I'm curious if there's a similar building or scale of building.
The dorms
At Acadia?
Yeah.
I see.
Yeah.
Kroll Tower. Got it. Okay. If somebody had that number. Around 300. Okay.
That's per year.
300 units per year?
To keep up.
The number is very, very, very significant.
Okay.
I wasn't here when the application for Housing Accelerator Fund, but I think I came just as the letter came out from the province confirming what it was, but it would be far more than 300 in total.
Okay. Thank you.
Councillor Huntley.
Thank you. Hi. I know we've talked a little bit about parking, but what I'm wondering, and when I looked at the map, I didn't see it, so I apologize if it's there. But it talks about number of parking lots, like say it's 1 per unit.
Yeah.
So, a couple of questions. What happens if an apartment has 2 vehicles? Secondly, is there a visitor parking? Because I know that if there's no visitor parking, that will stir up a ton of trouble when people can't get in their parking spots. Because when you think if there's no visitor parking, then there's a congestion that will happen, and I don't want people to be parking in other people's driveways, for example, who are up in that area.
Yeah.
Secondly, I know it talks about underground parking, and I didn't know how many parking units that would go underground as well. Do you know? If you know that, that'd be great.
I forget the exact number of what's above ground, but I think the total number of parking spots was 196. So a little over, about 20 spaces over the amount of units. I think they need just 1 per unit. I don't know if they have any plans to make that visitor parking or not, or how they plan to differentiate the parking. But I think there's a more significant portion of the parking that's above ground. I think it's closer to, I forget what the number exactly, 120 or 130 spots. Yeah.
Thank you.
Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to make a couple comments, maybe like through the chair to Councillor Huntley. So if you look at like Miners Landing, Parsons Green, I mean, there's very few visitor parking spots there, right? And even though, you know, you may have some people that are in apartments that might have 2 vehicles or whatever, sometimes they'll pay the developer a little bit extra or whatever to have those extra spots. And then the maintenance piece of it, obviously, your developer is going to ensure that, you know, if somebody's hired, whether they're in the valley or from Halifax, that come and do the maintenance on those properties. I'm back to the 9 stories. And the reason why I'm back to that is I'm sort of trying to look ahead to see what our land use bylaw changes, proposed changes will be.
For a second.
Okay.
Sorry, if I could just interrupt. I just want to remind council that the process now is to gather information from the development officer and from the appellants. So it should just be a listen and question session for now, and you're going to let your thoughts be known and after you hear from everyone. So I'm just a little bit concerned that that there may be some departure from that process. You need to make sure you're keeping an open mind and making comments about the project as opposed to simply asking questions of the development officer might be seen to depart from that process. So I just encourage you to keep it to questions until you've heard from all the parties.
Thank you, Solicitor, for that. Do we have the appellants in the audience? All right, we'll hear from the appellants.
Is this okay for mic distance?
Yep.
Thanks so much, everybody, for taking the time to listen to me today. Appreciate everybody's comments, particularly. My name is Aryan. I was going to introduce. My name's Aryan. Thank you, Mr. Zabian, with regards to the comments on traffic. My name's Aryan. I've lived at 64 School Street for over 10 years. And I'm just going to refer back to a Saltwire article from 2019, this time 2019, referencing, just quote, property owners have been notified, approved approved site plan. We did have some calls. We didn't have anyone come forward with an appeal. And today we have appeals, and virtually everybody within 30 meters is in attendance. Some couldn't make it, and when I went door to door, none of them were okay with the project, and all of them had concerns. Particularly, well, zoning matters, but also safety matters as well. And I understand that this is the way the proceedings are arranged, but frankly, again, thank you for listening to me today, but you are public servants, and I just feel, for example, Sylvia to the far left and Ron at the back, I understand these are the proceedings, but for us to give a 5-minute presentation with a weekend's notice, I just don't feel there's something kind of wrong with that. It should be the town or somebody's obligation to give us a presentation on how this development won't be an absolute disaster in terms of traffic, because if you look at the original slated plan, it was 119 units, and I'm hearing 176, but it's actually 176 plus what's already there. So an additional 176 units, multiply that by over 2 because families, effectively increasing traffic. It's got to be 4 to 5-fold in a small subdivision with a daycare across the street. I mean, what could possibly go wrong? At times, At times, I got to emphasize that, town seems to have an approve now and worry about it later policy. There seems to be lack of forethought at times of environmental and social consequences, and then no accountability or ownership when things play out. Example, Donald Hiltz Connector, top of Prospect, where ditches and culverts have been added, altering water flows, and as a result, everyone on these roads are seeing unprecedented amounts of water going down Glenview primarily, but also the back of Spring Garden where they've clear cut, as well as School Street. Another example I could give is Condon Avenue, but I won't get into that. But just real quick in closing, I just want this to be documented and highlighted and refer back to this statement if this goes through and something bad happens, that this amendment is not safe. I'm not hearing anything about sidewalks. Correct me if I'm wrong after. Not hearing anything about sidewalks. I'm not hearing anything about traffic studies with regards to maybe the old project, but the new project that is about to go underway. That's everything I've got. Thanks, everybody, for taking the time to listen.
Thank you. Is there another appellant in the audience who wishes to speak?
Hi. I'm not used to microphones. This is Ashley. She's 75?
74 School Street.
74, sorry. School Street. So good evening, members of Town Council and general public. Thank you for allowing me to speak tonight. I understand that I have about 5 minutes. I won't take that much of your time, and I appreciate your time. My name is Julie McCaddy, and I'm the owner of Little Pumpkins, the child care center that was just cited at 58 School Street, and a property owner of 14 School Street. Both are directly across from Ryan's Park. I initially chose not to appeal the original site plan in 2019, believing it would benefit Kentville and support a marginalized community. However, the vision of affordable community support living for seniors, families, and individuals with different abilities has been replaced with luxury dwellings starting at $17.85 a month plus utilities. This shift, along with other concerns, compelled me to appeal the recent proposed changes at Ryan's Park development. How did we stray so far from a goal of inclusive community support that Susan Harvey's dream was that we were sold? How can seniors, those relying on disability income and different abilities or marginalized families afford these luxury houses? They just can't. Significant changes to the original site plan, such as reconfiguring townhouses into 2 crowded rows instead of 4, reducing the usable green space, and removing a second entrance to the site off the lower end of School Street, seem to have been made without opportunity for community input. Was the council aware of these modifications that are already in existence? There are serious safety concerns to consider: increased traffic congestion and speeding on School Street. There's steep slopes and blind corners. They're already an issue right now. I myself was almost hit twice on Thursday, and I'm a grown adult crossing the street. People cut across from the loop and use School Street as their quick way around. The street is used by children for biking and scootering, and cyclists and pedestrians are already struggling for space. The narrow entrance at Park Street often causes traffic backups, and the anticipated influx of residents and vehicles will accentuate these problems. An estimated 400 new residences and 200 or more cars will add significant congestion to downtown loop, pollution, and garbage to our small residential neighborhood. Moreover, the infrastructure cannot support the growth. A persistent orange pylon at the end of School Street marks a large divot caused by stormwater, a symbol of the broader stormwater management issues we're facing as a town. Increased density will place additional stress on our sewer systems, water supply, and other services that are already under duress, healthcare and childcare being some of them. Our town's planning policies are outdated and ill-prepared for this population growth. We must review and update these policies to preserve the town's character and ensure sustainable development. Paving over green spaces, which no longer does exist in the future plan, and erecting high-rise buildings contradicts our identity as a town, which is known for a breath of fresh air. In conclusion, while we understand the need for development, it's crucial that any growth is sustainable, responsible, and considerate of the existing community needs. I urge the Town Council to consider the proposal amendments to ensure that they align with our community's needs and values, and let us work together to promote responsible growth and preserve quality of life in Kentville. I've lived here myself for 12 years, and I've owned Little Pumpkins Early Learning Center for almost 7.
and School Street for 4. I appreciate your attention.
Thank you.
Do you ask me questions or not?
No.
No, okay, thank you.
See you.
Just like to answer a question that Councillor York asked earlier. Based on the 2022 numbers, we will be 385 units short by 2027 and 790 units short by 2032. And that came from Alicia Christie, who would have authored the report.
All right, Council, based on the advice that the solicitor has provided, are there any further questions of either the appellants or of the development officer? Or CAO is here, and our Director of Planning is also here. Councillor Maxwell.
Just a quick question. Is there a second exit from this site, or is it just the one entry and exit?
Just the one. And it would have been the normal, like it was modified from the way you got into the school to make it wider, so there'd be in and out.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's wide?
Wider.
It's wider.
Yeah, wider.
Okay.
Yes.
Was there not a change in government wanting to have 2 exits? One coming in and, so that you always have an emergency exit?
No, there was always only the one, like the old KCA.
Yeah, I know,
Yeah, that's all that was ever required there.
Okay, thank you.
Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor, and perhaps you can explain what we can ask and what we can't ask, because that seemed, there's some ambiguity, obviously, around that for me, so that's number one. Number two, I understand the site plan approval process set out in 232 of the MGA, and that it does not require a public hearing. I understand all of those things. I do have some concerns with this. Housing is very important, and I think we need to move forward. But I think with regards to some of the potential proposed changes in our MPS and LUB, I'm struggling with this one a little bit right now, but perhaps I'm not even allowed to make that comment because as per what the solicitor said. So maybe you can clarify that.
I have as much clarity as you do on the matter. It was my understanding that we could ask the questions that we needed to make a decision. And our decision is, do we support the development officer or do we turn down this application? Councillor Zabian?
Thank you, Mayor Snow. It's probably not the time to say this, but I think we need more information. From my perspective here, this is rushed, and I mean, this just fell into us on Wednesday of last week too, so I can appreciate the folks in the audience saying that they had a weekend to prepare, and I had a couple of days to read this. I had no idea that this was, I kind of wondered what was happening up there because it's years, it's been sitting there, but I mean, this is, even though the approval's there, they've had all these years to go as is, and now we've got this change, and this is not a small change, and I'm not going to say I lost faith in any developer, but I mean, they've deviated quite a bit in the last, how many years now has it been? 5 years or 6 years since they started. That's a lot of changes, even in their original project, and I think, if I recall, and I wasn't on council then, they never obliged by their original contract. They kind of didn't, they failed to meet their timelines, and there was no recourse. They did carry on, and I'm glad to see it there, but they've kind of had a free reign up there, and I think that's a fact. So personally, just going to throw this out there, I'd rather get more information on the traffic study. I'd like to see if there was one in 2019, at least start there, and I'd kind of like to see too, with the original
Councillor
Ryan's
Zabian, we're at the point now, we're not debating, and you've gone on to debate the motion. Right now, we are collecting information.
Well, I'd like to see the, sorry, Mayor Snow, I'll apologize. I'd like to see the traffic study, if there was one in 2019. And I'd also like for more information to see how they've deviated from the very beginning. So even those row houses or townhouses that were built, how have those changed since what was originally presented to council in 2019 when I wasn't here? So thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor Maxwell.
Thank you. I know you probably haven't had discussions with the developer, but I'm just wondering if he'd still entertain the original 3-building option. You don't know?
I don't know.
Okay, thank you.
Sir, can I help you?
Yes. My name is Stephen North. I'm a long-term resident of Kentville. I own a an apartment building directly
No, turn
opposite
them
the
off,
site.
please. What do you wish to speak on?
This development.
You cannot, sir. You are not one of the appellants. Only the people who put in an appeal against this are permitted to speak on the matter. It's
I'm also a
only the
commercial, residential, and industrial property appraiser. I own the building across the street from the site.
So there's a very formal process to the appeal, and
Well, I wasn't aware of it,
I'm sorry, sir, but you won't have a voice at this meeting for this discussion.
I prefer horizontal development to vertical. Monopolized market.
Thank you, sir. Councillor Gerard.
Thank you, Worship. I'm wondering if it would be prudent. Number one, they're adding a third to the development that was approved. I would think that would warrant a new traffic study, especially in a very low densely populated area like that. I guess my second question would be the wastewater or sewer, what's below it, and if adding a third to that development would impact anything down below, or if what is existing down below, which I can only assume is several decades old, could be compromised or has the capacity. Thank you.
CAO.
So planning is not my background. Perhaps the solicitor could come forward and speak to the process for this meeting and what should and shouldn't be asked. And if the director of planning wants to add anything, that would be very much appreciated.
So the two of us might take that one on. The council can make any decision the development officer can make. So questions that the development officer might have, concerns for the developer that are relevant to the development, such as traffic access, right, the density, those sorts of things. Are questions that council can evaluate and gather information on. So if council isn't satisfied it has sufficient information here tonight, I encourage you to ask the development officer first whether they have the information that you're seeking. And if you have all the information, then you can make any decision the development officer could make, which in this context really looks like it's either approve this site plan or don't, in which case there is a site plan, as I understand it, that has been approved. So I encourage you to have those discussions with your development officer. He's here this evening. Have it with your director of planning, who's also here this evening. If you have questions for the appellants about the specific concerns that they have relative to the land use bylaw, then I encourage you to ask them those questions as well, because their appeal must be based on concerns arising from the land use bylaw. They can't be, they don't like the development. That's not good enough. It has to be based in the land use bylaw. So if they can't point you to specific concerns that arise from the land use bylaw, then their appeal shouldn't succeed. You can ask your professionals, your experts, whether particular issues are ones that fall within the land use bylaw if you have any doubt about that. and your development officer can address that for you. Okay? Hopefully that helps. And
Thank you.
Through the chair, I don't have much to add to that. I mean, it gives good context and sets the table on the sort of decision that you have to make. In a sense, you're acting as a development officer, and your guide is the land use bylaw. And I realize that there's a lot of other issues that may surround new development in a community, but the focus should try to remain on the policy and the regulations and the land use bylaw on this case. And the two options that are available to a development officer to either approve or not approve. Thanks.
So Director Shute, before you step away, one of the requests is for a traffic study. Is that part of a site plan approval?
We received the advice of the traffic authority for the town, and that's what the development officer is basing his decision on.
Okay.
And again, that's what's available for council tonight. In terms of having more information, I believe the solicitor mentioned that's something that council can ask for. But I'm slightly outside. If he has any other information on how that information would come, if we schedule another meeting for that, that's slightly outside of my knowledge base for that one.
Right. So the other question that's been asked of the group is with regards to the 9 stories. Now, we do not have any rules against height in the town of Kentville, so therefore a 9-story building and the fact that he's looking at it is not within our purview as part of the MPS land use bylaw.
It wasn't a consideration for the development officer in this case. As you mentioned, there is no height restriction, so based on what's in the land use bylaw, it's not really germane to this particular development.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
I might, while we're tag teaming here, so things like traffic, for example, a question for your planning staff might be, just for example, at what point might they look at a traffic study, for example? And perhaps all the expertise isn't present, and that's something that they'd have to come back to you with. If you're not prepared to make a decision today, you need to table this decision for another night. After you get the rest of the information that you want. And I just want to emphasize what the director said, right? You're focused on the land use bylaw. So if you aren't sure, because you don't know the land use bylaw like these gentlemen know the land use bylaw, if you're not sure, they're your resource, so you lean on them.
Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Your Worship. I don't know if this is in order or not, but I'm prepared to, if I'm able, to make a motion to defer this to our next council meeting.
In September, at the end of September.
Mm-hmm.
I would second that.
Or table, whatever you prefer, Solicitor.
So I would recommend that if you're going to do that, that you do it because you're looking for specific information from your staff and you make it clear what that information is that you need, because otherwise council should be making a decision here tonight.
Okay, thank you, Solicitor, and I'll take it from here. So first and foremost, the citizens who are here as appellants received the letter on June 21st, 2024, and they were told at that, or in this letter, it stated that they would be heard on Monday, July 29th, 2024 in council chambers. So there was more than since Wednesday with knowledge of this appeal. Secondly, we are in decision-making mode, and our motion is that council uphold the development officer's decision to grant site plan approval, and then we'll go from there and get the information that staff needs. Is there anyone willing to move that motion?
You had a motion on the floor, though.
No, I didn't. There was no motion.
No, I made a motion. Unless I was not.
No, the solicitor stood up and said that we were in decision-making mode and that there wasn't specifics in your motion.
There can be. But if you wanted.
So your motion is?
My motion is to defer this until our next council meeting.
So that we're tabling the decision?
Table, defer, yeah, whatever works. So that we can get some more information around the stories and so that we can get more information around the traffic study. I'll keep those pretty general.
Your Worship?
Go ahead.
I don't believe that you can hold up the appeal based on the stories, but I stand corrected. The traffic study could be relevant if you need more information on the traffic study.
Okay, the traffic study.
It has to be with regards to what's in our current MPS LUB. That's how this site approval was made. So those are the criteria that have to be used for the process. And because we don't have a height restriction, you can't put that in there.
So I'll take that out of the motion.
So traffic?
Yes, traffic. Might as well add sewer in there as well. Can we add sewer? Happy to add sewer capacity.
Anything else? All right, so the motion would read that council table the site plan approval appeal and further request information from staff on traffic and sewer capacity.
So moved. Second.
Councillor Zabian had the second originally, so if we can stay with that.
Apologies.
I believe your worship said earlier it'd be to the September meeting, but I just wanted to encourage that that be established because there may be meetings between now and then.
I specifically did not put a date in there pending information from the CAO, from the staff side of the house, whether or not this could be done in a more expedient manner, because
So
otherwise that's a two-month delay on this.
So it will come to the next meeting of council. If you just table it,
Okay.
it'll come back to the next meeting of council.
Site plan appeal until the next meeting,
Yeah, that's why I wanted to use the word defer.
next meeting of council. Okay, so we're tabling the site plan approval appeal until the next meeting of council and further request information from staff on traffic and sewer capacity. All good? Deputy Mayor, you're good with that? Councillor Zabian, you're good with that? All right, it has been moved and seconded that council table the site plan approval appeal until the next meeting of council and further request information from staff on traffic and sewer capacity. Is there any further discussion on this matter? There being no further discussion, are you ready for the question? The question is on adoption of the motion to table the site plan approval appeal until the next meeting of council and further request information from staff on traffic and sewer capacity. Voting is now open. Voting is now closed, and the motion is carried. All right, we have two matters of correspondence. The first is on the Canada Community Building Fund Agreement, and that we've received from our MLA, John Lohr. And for those of you who are wondering, CCBF funding is the former gas tax. So it's now called Canadian Community Building Funds. And of course, it's good news. It means that there's money available for the province of Nova Scotia through that. The second is with regards to flooding concerns from Krista Lang on West Main Street. And that has been addressed to her under separate correspondence. We are now open for our public comments. You will be provided with 3 minutes. We ask you that you please give your name and your address as Kentville, and then provide your comments, please.
My name's Gary Randall, and thanks once again for reserving the first shot for me. I actually live right across from the school, just development, right? But I must be more than 30 meters because I've never got a letter yet. I was here when Dave Corcoran and when the council actually changed the zoning, and Mayor Corcoran said that basically if the zoning's changed, I had asked the question, how high can the building be? He said that'll be up to the developer. I said, in other words, it won't be changed if the zoning goes through. He said, nope, it's up to the developer. And I said, well, the only influence I have now is to vote you out. Just in jest, right? I actually went door to door with Dave. Not that I wouldn't have gone with Sandra if she'd asked me, right? But we just didn't connect, right? So, but anyway, that's my history with this. I know, probably wasting my time here, or you guys might be, but the building go any height. Maybe the helicopter, life flight might just influence if it got up there around 20 stories or so. The stormwater management plan is study or whatever has been done. As a resident that lives across from that development, I drove around town last storm just to see who was getting flooded out, and I was actually on Condon Avenue when it overflowed. And my truck just went like this. I thought the transmission gave out, but it was the big boulders coming down, and I think it was you there packing sandbags, and I heard later your daughter as well, and I think Councillor Zabian ended up there. An excuse? I had just been to the chiropractor, so I got the hell out of there, right? So anyway, I looked at School Street, and there are a few drains down in, old drains that were there, I suppose, in the school driveway and so on when the school existed. And I observed water coming up the drains instead of going down the drains. And when the water did go down, a lot of the sand that's there went down the drain as well. So usually a drain only has water coming up it when it's either blocked downstream or it can't handle the flow of the water. And we know from Spring Garden Road down to wherever that underground piping goes, it's an issue. Because the pipe at Spring Garden Road, which is the entrance to the pipe that flows down through under School Street, underneath the schoolyard, often overflows on the entrance side and runs down over that gentleman's driveway and washes it out, and the town bring more gravel in and fill the driveway back in again. Where do you think that gravel's going to? It's going to the curb drain, which is on the hill when you look down into the schoolyard, right? It may be clogging it up. I live on the very end of the curb drain I live on the very end of the storm drain going uphill on the opposite side of the road. The south side, it's a 6-inch pipe. And water does not go down my drain anymore. But I'm not really concerned about it because I'm on the end, right? The water just flows over top of it and goes down further, down the street. And if you go down far enough, it comes up the drains because it can't either handle the flow or it's full of dirt, gravel, or boulders. And what else? I'll just skip over for a sec, because we only got 3 minutes, but.
You're done.
I'm done now? Okay. Traffic, there's no sidewalk. I seen a dog fall over on the sidewalk the other day because the sidewalk's so rough. Anyway, 3 minutes, I'll be back. Thank you.
Hello,
That goes down, so that you're more comfortable.
The mic will bend down.
Oh,
There you go.
thank you. Thought you were trying to stop me.
No, no, no.
I'm John Burka. I'm with the Blobberton Naturalist, and I live in Miners Landing in Kentville. And this is my third time speaking here. I've been corresponding with you for over a year about Ron Cousin's property and saving the trees that are there. We have a vested interest in the trees. They are over 100 to 200 years old, and I have talked to engineers who designed the Hills connector a long time ago, and the road was built around the property, and the road can be sustained around the property. I'm concerned that this has taken so long. I'd like to know how long it will take to make a decision. I don't know whether you're trying to wear me out by, I don't find these meetings very appealing to come to them every time, but I care about the property, about the trees, and about Ron, and about the future of that road. The road can go around. Once you have a high-speed road as well, you're going to want, in 3 years' time, you're going to want to put provisions in to slow traffic down. So why not slow the traffic down right away and go with the design as it is right now, and not cut the trees, go around the property like it was designed to be years ago when Larry Honey was acting mayor, and just don't cut the trees down. So please let me know. I keep getting letters just, thank you for your letter. We are dealing with it. We'll let you know when something happens. It's over a year. Please let me know when you are going to make a decision. This is taking too long.
I haven't been living in the area. I've been living at the lake for the summer. Never got the notice. Like I said earlier, I own the 4-unit apartment building across the street from this development. The driveway there has washed out several times.
Sir, can I just get your name for the minute?
Yeah, Stephen North.
Thank you.
Yeah. It's washed out several times, and we filled it up at our expense. That is, some of the surrounding owners have gotten together and paid for what really is a town problem. I know you were talking earlier about the need for housing and rental housing. I've invested in the rental housing business, unfortunately. I've also bought shares in Killam, unfortunately. And I say that because I never anticipated being told what to do by the government or having increases limited to 2% when my insurance rates are going up by 10%, and along with taxes and everything else. So you want more rental housing? Give the landlords a break. Like I said, am a lifetime resident of this area, and I would prefer to see more horizontal development than vertical development, and some local investment, rather than a couple major developers controlling everything and going vertical rather than horizontal. They can basically control the market unless someone's prepared to help small investors like myself. I just don't like the fact that I'm also losing my view on the property. So it could have a negative effect on my building, because we do look out over the valley, and a 9-unit building is going to negatively affect that. And I'm still wondering about the drainage. I know that there have been complaints up and down that stream about erosion and overflows, and no one has done anything, and I'm aware of it having gone on for decades. So I can't see how you can go ahead with a major development like that without having a real look at your infrastructure, not to mention the traffic that will come to bear on that area. And that's about all I've got to say. Again, I'm familiar with property valuation as I appraise multiple commercial and industrial properties. And, you know, I would have some concerns about someone trying to monopolize, or a couple developers trying to monopolize the values and negatively affecting small entrepreneurs that are in the business. Anyway, that's my 2 cents worth. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Ron Cousins. I was got a phone call from Turner Drake asking me if I wanted to sell my land, and I don't want to sell my land. I've told you that, and I don't want to get any more phone calls. I made it clear to the town manager and that I don't want to sell my land, and I've told you I don't want to sell it. So I wish you'd just leave me alone. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, thank you very much. We have remaining business in camera, the completion of the minutes. So I would accept a motion to move into camera. Thank you, Councillor Zabian. Councillor Huntley for the second. It's been moved and seconded that council move into the closed session. The question is on adoption of the motion to move in the closed session. All those in favor? Those opposed? Motion is carried, and the time is 8:11.